The lawyer's voice echoed across the sunlit cemetery as he read the will, and my heart stopped when he said the name Sawyer Thompson as the sole beneficiary of Kingston Hale's entire estate. I was just the guy who walked his dog. But now the family that never knew about us was staring at me like I had stolen their world. The California sun beat down warmly on the manicured grass of the private cemetery overlooking the Pacific, a far cry from the gloomy funerals you see in movies. I stood at the back of the small crowd, clutching Buddy's leash so tightly my knuckles turned white. The golden retriever whimpered softly, sensing the tension, his tail tucked between his legs. Kingston's sister, Evelyn, shot me a glare that could cut glass, while his parents clutched each other in disbelief. I wanted to disappear into the bright blue sky above, but there was no escaping this moment. How had I even ended up here? 2 years earlier, life had been simple, if not exactly easy. I had moved to Los Angeles from a small town in Oregon where being gay meant keeping your head down and your mouth shut. My family back home still sent me polite texts on holidays, never asking about my personal life, and I had learned to stop volunteering details. Rent in LA was brutal, so I signed up for a dog-walking app one desperate afternoon. The first notification that popped up was for a client in the hills. Kingston Hale, a tech investor with a golden retriever named Buddy who needed daily walks while he traveled for business. I showed up at his sleek modern home expecting a quick transaction, but Kingston opened the door himself, tall and effortlessly put together in a crisp button-down, his dark hair just starting to gray at the temples. At 42, he had the kind of quiet confidence that made you feel seen without words. Buddy bounded out, nearly knocking me over with enthusiasm, and Kingston laughed, a deep, genuine sound that eased something tight in my chest. "He's a handful, but he's the best part of my day," he said, handing me the leash. Our eyes met for a second longer than necessary, and I felt a spark I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. The walks became routine. I'd pick up Buddy, wander the winding trails near Griffith Park, and return him tired and happy. Kingston started being home more often, offering me water or a quick chat about the weather or the latest Dodgers game. He never pried, but he listened when I mentioned how hard it was to feel like I belonged anywhere after leaving home. One afternoon, after a particularly long walk in the heat, he invited me inside for lemonade. We sat on his patio overlooking the city, and for the first time, I told someone about the last fight with my parents before I left Oregon. The way my dad had said, "We love you, but we can't understand this." Kingston didn't offer advice or pity. He just nodded and said, "Some families take longer to catch up. Mine still hasn't." That was the beginning of something I never saw coming. Over the next months, our conversations deepened. Kingston shared fragments of his own life. The pressure of building his company from nothing, the fear that coming out would cost him investors and family respect. He had dated women in public for years to keep up appearances, but nothing real. With me, he didn't have to pretend. Our first real date was nothing flashy, just coffee at a quiet cafe in Silver Lake where no one knew him. He reached across the table and brushed his fingers against mine, and that simple touch felt like permission to breathe. By the end of the first year, we had built a careful world together. Secret dinners at his place, weekend hikes where we could hold hands without fear, late-night talks about dreams and fears. I fell in love with the man who chose me despite everything stacked against us. He said I made him feel alive for the first time. I believed him. Buddy became our dog in every way that mattered, the bridge between my ordinary life and Kingston's polished one. I never pushed Kingston to come out. I understood the stakes, the board meetings where his conservative partners would have balked at the truth, the holiday dinners with his family where I was never mentioned. We lived in the moments we stole, and they were enough until they weren't. One evening after a walk, Kingston pulled me into the living room and kissed me softly, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. "You're the only person who sees me, Sawyer," he whispered against my lips. Not the CEO, not the son, just me. I held him tighter, feeling the weight of his hidden life. We talked about the future in whispers, plans that felt fragile but real. Maybe a small trip to Europe where no one knew us, maybe telling his sister first. He promised that one day the secrecy would end. Life outside our bubble tested me constantly. My best friend, Marcus, a fellow dog walker, noticed I was happier but never pressed when I dodged questions about who I was seeing. At night, alone in my tiny apartment, doubt crept in. Was I enough for a man like Kingston? He deserved someone who could stand beside him in the light, not hide in the shadows. But every time I saw him waiting at the door with Buddy, those doubts melted. Then came the signs I ignored. Kingston started canceling walks more often, blaming work stress. When we were together, he seemed tired, his usual energy dimmed. I urged him to see a doctor, but he waved it off with a laugh. "I'm fine, Sawyer. Just need more time with you." We spent a perfect weekend at his cabin up north, hiking with Buddy and talking late into the night about everything and nothing. He told me he had updated his will recently, that he wanted to make sure I was protected. I teased him about being dramatic, never imagining the truth. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Kingston's assistant, voice shaking, told me he had collapsed during a meeting. A massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance reached the hospital. I dropped the phone, Buddy whining at my feet, and the world tilted sideways. I couldn't even go to the hospital. No one knew who I was to him. I sat on my couch for hours, staring at the wall, replaying every moment we had shared. The grief was a physical ache, sharp and unrelenting. I attended the funeral as the dog walker, invited by the assistant who knew more than she let on. Standing there now in the bright sunlight, watching Evelyn dab her eyes while whispering to their parents, I felt like an intruder. The lawyer cleared his throat and continued reading. To my parents and sister, I leave the family trust and my apologies for not being the son they wanted. To Sawyer Thompson, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the house, the company shares, and all liquid assets, because he gave me the courage to be myself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's face twisted in fury. "This is ridiculous. He barely knew that boy." The lawyer handed me an envelope with Kingston's handwriting on it, and I clutched it like a lifeline as the family closed in. Evelyn stepped forward first, her voice low and venomous. "You think you can waltz in here and take everything my brother built?" He was confused, probably manipulated. "We'll fight this." Her husband nodded beside her, while Kingston's mother looked at me with something close to pity mixed with disgust. I wanted to scream that I loved him, that he loved me back, but the words stuck in my throat. Later, in the lawyer's office downtown, the reality sank in. The estate was worth millions. The house in the hills, investment properties, a tech startup Kingston had poured his soul into. The letter inside the envelope was short but devastating. "Sawyer, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I couldn't say it enough while I was here, but you were my everything. Don't let them take that from you. Live the life we dreamed about. Love, Kingston." Tears blurred the page. Buddy leaned against my leg, and for the first time since the call, I let myself cry. Moving into the house felt wrong at first. Every room held memories. The kitchen where we cooked pasta and laughed about bad movies. The patio where we watched the sunset and talked about coming out together. I found journals hidden in his desk, pages filled with his private thoughts. He wrote about the fear of disappointing his family, the joy he found in our quiet nights, the regret that he never introduced me publicly. Reading them felt like having him back for a few precious minutes. The legal fight started almost immediately. Evelyn filed to contest the will, claiming undue influence and lack of capacity. Reporters started calling, sniffing around for a scandal. "Dog walker inherits millions from gay tech mogul" headlines began appearing online. I stayed inside with Buddy, ignoring the world, but the pressure built. Marcus stopped by one night with takeout, the only person I had told the full truth to. "You deserve this, Sawyer. He chose you because he loved you. Don't let them make you doubt that." His words helped, but the doubt lingered. Was I worthy of this life? I started walking Buddy through the same trails we used to share, talking to Kingston out loud like he could hear me. Slowly, the grief shifted into something steadier. a determination to honor what we had. I met with the company lawyers, learning the basics of the business Kingston had built from scratch. It was overwhelming, but each small decision felt like a step toward the man he believed I could be. Weeks turned into months, and the court battles dragged on. Evelyn's team painted me as a gold digger who had preyed on her vulnerable brother. They brought in old colleagues who testified that Kingston had seemed stressed lately, implying I was the cause. I sat in the courtroom, dressed in the only suit I owned, feeling exposed in a way I never had before. The judge listened patiently, but the media circus outside grew louder. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from distant relatives back in Oregon who had seen the news. "Is this true? Are you gay?" one aunt asked. I didn't answer. The turning point came when I found more of Kingston's journals in the attic. One entry, dated just weeks before he died, read, "Sawyer makes me want to be brave. If something happens, I want him to have it all so he never has to hide again." Reading that broke something open inside me. I realized the inheritance wasn't just money. It was his final act of love and trust. I started therapy, talking through the identity crisis I had buried for years. Being outed this way forced me to confront parts of myself I had kept hidden even from myself. Marcus introduced me to a small group of friends from the local LGBTQ center. They didn't care about the fortune. They saw a guy grieving his first real love. One evening, I volunteered at an event for young people coming out to unsupportive families. Listening to their stories mirrored my own past, and for the first time I shared mine publicly. The words felt freeing. I loved a man who couldn't fully love himself in the open, but he gave me the chance to do it for both of us. The room applauded, and I felt Kingston's presence stronger than ever. The family tension peaked when Evelyn showed up at the house unannounced. "You don't belong here," she hissed. This was supposed to stay in the family. I didn't argue. Instead, I showed her one of the journal pages where Kingston wrote about wishing he could have been honest with her. She read it in silence, tears welling up, and left without another word. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall. I began making small changes. I donated a portion of the funds to the LGBTQ Center and started a scholarship in Kingston's name for young entrepreneurs who were openly gay. Each decision felt like carrying forward the dreams we had whispered about. Buddy thrived in the bigger yard, and slowly, the house started to feel like home rather than a museum of what we lost. The betrayal hit hardest when a former colleague of Kingston's leaked private emails to the press. In them, Kingston had defended our relationship to a board member who suspected something. The headlines exploded. "Secret gay affair behind millionaire's will." Evelyn used it to push harder in court, claiming emotional manipulation. I sat across from her in mediation, exhausted and raw. "He loved you," I said quietly. "He just didn't know how to show it the way you wanted." For the first time, she didn't snap back. She looked away, and I saw the same grief I carried. That night, alone with Buddy, I considered walking away. Give up the fight, let the family have it all. The money had brought nothing but pain and exposure. I packed a bag, ready to return to my old apartment and my old life. But as I stood at the door, Buddy whined and nudged the journal on the table. Kingston's words stared back at me. "Don't let fear win, Sawyer. You are stronger than you know." I unpacked the bag. The next morning, I called my parents in Oregon. The conversation was awkward and tearful, but honest. "I'm gay, and I loved someone deeply. He left me everything because he trusted me to live fully." My mom cried, my dad was silent for a long time, but they didn't hang up. It was a start. Marcus and my new friends rallied around me, reminding me that chosen family could be just as strong. The court date arrived, and I testified about our relationship, not as a scandal but as a love story. I spoke about the quiet moments, the support, the way Kingston encouraged me to chase my own dreams of writing. The judge ruled in my favor, citing clear intent in the will. Evelyn approached me afterward. "I didn't know," she admitted. "I wish he had told me." We didn't hug, but the anger had softened into something closer to understanding. With the legal battle over, I finally breathed. The house became a place of healing rather than hiding. I kept Buddy by my side through every step, his loyal presence a constant reminder of Kingston. I threw myself into the company, learning the ropes and making changes that aligned with Kingston's quiet values. More inclusive policies, support for LGBTQ employees. The work felt meaningful, like extending his legacy in ways he never could. 1 year after the funeral, I stood on the same patio where we had shared our first lemonade. The sun was bright, the city sparkling below. I had come out fully to everyone who mattered, started dating again cautiously, and even visited my parents for a tentative holiday. The inheritance had given me security, but the real gift was the courage Kingston had passed on. I no longer questioned if I deserved it. I knew I did because I was living the life he wanted for both of us. Buddy barked happily as I tossed his favorite ball across the yard. Life moved forward, not without scars, but with purpose. The man who once felt invisible had stepped into the light, carrying love that death couldn't erase. True or false? Can a single act of love from beyond the grave truly heal the wounds of prejudice and self-doubt?